Approximately 23,000 men have played professional gridiron in the National Football League since its inception over 100 years ago. While everyone dreams of going out a champion, not everyone gets what they want. Some superstars had bittersweet finales, while some had careers end on a truly sour note. Here are my top 10 NFL stars who got the worst send-offs. And for everyone screaming Dan Marino, don't worry, he's on this list. But before we get to him, we have to start with number 10. Johnny Unitas. The original Johnny Football made himself a household name when he led the Baltimore Colts to an overtime touchdown in the 1959 NFL Championship game, dubbed the greatest game ever played. Unitas revolutionized the quarterback position in a very run-heavy era. He led the league in passing yards 4 consecutive years and became the first quarterback to pass for 30 touchdowns in a season. Unitas was named League MVP 3 times, a Pro Bowler 10 times, and took his Colts to a win in Super Bowl V. So how does a Mount Rushmore level quarterback end up on our list? Well, in 1973, the 40-year-old Unitas signed with the San Diego Chargers, and there is no way that this sentence ends well. His final game came in Week 4 of that season, as he went 2 of 9 for 19 yards and 2 picks to the steel curtain, and was benched in the second half by unproven rookie Dan Fouts. This is a picture of Dan Fouts later in life, standing next to a bust of himself at his Hall of Fame enshrinement. Yeah, the Chargers rolled with Fouts as they went 247-1 over the next 5 years in a revolving door of head coaches because the Chargers were trash. But then Air Coryell made them an actual team to change decades. Unitas retired ahead of the 1974 season. A bittersweet goodbye for the great. Now the next one is a twofer, because both of these legends called it quits after the same disastrous playoff game. Number 9 and number 8, Lawrence Taylor and Phil Simms. If you played NFC East football in the 1980s, you had to answer to Lawrence Taylor. This dude was the best linebacker to ever play the position. This is not an opinion, this is fact. He won Defensive Player of the Year 3 times and was also named the 1986 regular season MVP en route to a Super Bowl 21 win. A Super Bowl at which Phil Simms won Super Bowl MVP for going 22 of 25 for 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. We call that the best quarterback performance in the Super Bowl. Taylor remains the last defensive player to be named NFL MVP, and that was almost 40 years ago. That is how hard he balled. Though he struck fear into the hearts of anyone who had to go against him, injuries started plaguing his performance and playtime headed into the 90s. Simms also suffered an injury that sat him out for the end of the 1990 season, so Jeff Hofstetler took the reins for the Super Bowl 25 win. If you win a Super Bowl in the twilight of your career, I think it's going pretty well for you. Still, they both stuck around for 3 more years in hopes that the G-Men could get back to the top. But the Cowboys dynasty basically funneled the division through Dallas. The Giants still made the playoffs in the 1993 season, but lost to the Niners in the divisional round in a 44-3 drumming at Candlestick. Simms completed just 49% of his passes and threw 2 interceptions. The defense couldn't stop the Niners as Ricky Watters rushed for a playoff record 5 touchdowns. The route served as a sad end for an era in New York, and it didn't help that the TV feed kept cutting to LT crying on the sideline. He made his retirement announcement during the post-game press conference, while Simms made his retirement later that offseason. LT has been,
There were times I'd be standing in the huddle, And instead of thinking what defense we were playing, I'd be thinking about smoking crack after the game.
Well, at least he's clean now.
Former NFL player Lawrence Taylor has been charged in Broward County. He's accused of failing to register as a sex offender.
Lee. And Sims has been kicking back doing commentating for different stations. Well, that was the last of LT in the NFL. It won't be the last we see of him on the list. Number 7. Donovan McNab. Donovan McNab was the future of the Eagles offense headed into the new millennium, whether the Philly faithful liked it or not. And believe me, they didn't like it.
The Philadelphia Eagles select Donovan McNab, quarterback, Syracuse University.
Well, who's booing now? Because McNab put up Pro Bowl numbers in his first 5 years as a starter and led the Eagles to 3 straight NFC Championship losses. But you know what they say, 4th time's the charm. The Eagles finally made it to the Super Bowl where McNab was one alleged hangover away from winning. After another NFC Championship loss, the Eagles shipped him off to division rival Washington redacted team name, where he only stayed 1 season because the team was in shambles. They went 6-10, including a blowout loss to McNab's old team in what is now known as the Monday Night Massacre. The Eagles beat Washington 59-28, but at least McNab was able to throw a touchdown to his old team. How sweet. Washington traded McNab to the Vikings, where he basically served as a bridge quarterback. He only played in the first 6 games, winning just 1 of them. His last game was a 39-10 rout at the hands of Jay Cutler and the Chicago Bears. God, why? He went 19 of 24 for 177 yards and no touchdowns, with Adrian Peterson scoring Minnesota's only touchdown. God, they made AP suffer through this too? Why? McNab got pulled and the Vikings put in hot rookie sensation Christian Ponder. This just keeps getting worse. McNab got the bench as the Vikes split time between Christian Ponder and Joe Webb as they finished off the year 3-13. Which is what you'd expect if who you put in as quarterback are Christian Ponder and Joe Webb. McNab retired the following offseason because there's really no recovering from getting replaced with Christian Ponder. Number 6. Steve Smith Sr. The Carolina Panthers selected Steve Smith Sr. in the 3rd round of the 2001 draft, and he made an immediate impact with a near 2,000-yard receiving season. The Panthers also made an impact in the basement, winning their first game and losing the other 15. They got things turned around and won their division in 2003. They faced the greatest show on turf in the playoffs and snapped their home playoff win streak with a double overtime touchdown to Steve Smith. The Panthers advanced to the NFC Championship and squeaked past the Eagles to advance to Super Bowl 38. Hey, there's McNab. In the big game, Smith caught 4 passes for 80 yards and a tud, and the Panthers were a shank away from possibly getting a ring. They made another NFC Championship appearance 2 years later, but lost it to the Seahawks. No complaints. Smith entered free agency in 2013 and signed with the Ravens, who conveniently played the Panthers that season. Smith dumped on his old team with 7 catches for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Ravens made the playoffs that year, but lost to the Patriots in the divisional round because of course. Smith made it to the 3rd year of his 3-year contract, and no one knew for sure whether he'd re-sign or retire. In his final game, Smith Sr. caught 3 passes for just 34 yards in a 27-10 snooze fest to the Cincinnati Bengals. Neither of these teams were even scratching the surface of the playoffs, making this an utterly meaningless Week 17 matchup. Even worse than losing his final game, it was in Ugh, Cincinnati. Even though his last game was a terrible one, Smith made sure to hold a positive outlook.
This game has given me a lot, but at the same time, I need to give my family more.
Plus, he's now an analyst and a cameraman for Carolina home games, so at least he can stay close to the sport. We've reached the halfway point, so now it's time for today's sponsor, viewers like you. I really want to make more video essays on the NFL, but since they like to put copyright claims on anything that looks, feels, or smells like gridiron, I can't be so sure that this video doesn't get demonetized, meaning I'm not sure I could get money from the work I want to get money from. So if you want to support this channel, you can kick in a donation on my Ko-fi page, and you can also check out merch on Redbubble. Links for both are in the description, and if future me is smart, in one of those floating pop-up tag things. Thank you for your consideration, and on to the rest of the video. Number 5. Barry Sanders. Possibly the greatest running back to ever grace the earth, and the only reason anyone watched the Detroit Lions in the 90s. Barry Sanders was a nightmare for any defense. His speed made him untouchable, and his elusiveness made defenders look silly as he torched them for huge gains. Sanders had 5 1,500-yard seasons, which we in the business call pretty damn good. In 1991, he rushed for 103 yards a game en route to the only playoff game the Lions have won since 1957. Yeah, it doesn't matter how damn good he was still stuck on the Lions. They had a clone of Walter Payton on their roster and only managed 2 10-win seasons with him. Detroit. How does everything you touch die? In 1997, Sanders became only the 3rd running back in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards in a season, for which he won MVP. The Lions only managed a 9-7 record and lost on the road to Tampa in the wild card because we can't have anything nice in the world. Quick side note. You want to know how that game ended? The quarterback spiked the ball on 4th down. Detroit. The following year would be Sanders' last, as he rushed 9 yards shy of a record 5th straight 1,500-yard season, and came second in MVP voting behind Terrell Davis and his 2,000-yard campaign. If only the Lions were as good as Sanders was, because they would have one winning season in the following 12 years. In his final game, Sanders carried the ball 19 times for 42 yards. That's bad. He had a long of 31 yards, meaning he had 18 carries for 11 yards. At the end of the first half, he had 10 carries for -1 yards. That is disastrous. In another meaningless Week 17 game, the Ravens won 19-10 as the Lions ended the season 5-11 because these are still the Lions. Sanders retired in the off-season, which is a damn shame because we never got to see what he could do on a real team. Number 4, Dan Marino. We've all seen the secret base on this, but for a refresher, Dan Marino, Hall of Fame quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, first quarterback to throw for 5,000 yards in a season, orchestrator of the fake spike, Ace Ventura co-star, had done it all in his career, but still had a Lombardi Trophy-shaped hole missing in his resume. The closest he came was his second year at the helm in the 1984 season, where he won his only MVP. The Finns went 14-2 en route to Super Bowl 19, but got destroyed by the 15-1 Niners 38-16. Thus started a decade and a half of fruitless efforts trying to get back there. Ahead of the 1999 season, rumors spread that it would be Marino's last, making a playoff push that more important. They eked out a 9-7 record, good enough for a wildcard spot behind the Buffalo Bills and the AFC East winner Indianapolis Colts. Kind reminder that the Colts were once in the AFC East. The Miami Dolphins lost in the divisional round to the Jacksonville Jaguars to the tune of 62-7. 62 points. You gotta understand how bad this is. This was the first 60 burger in the NFL since 1985 and remains the only 60 burger in modern playoffs. Bad on all accounts. The defense couldn't stop diddly poo, the special teams was anything but, and the offense couldn't get anything going. Marino went 11 of 25 for 1 touchdown and 2 picks, as well as a strip sack fumble, which then got returned for the world's slowest touchdown. Absolutely terrible. The cherry on top was the sprinklers turning on midway through the third, which basically sums up the game. Though Marino's farewell became the worst loss for a retiring quarterback, and for good measure, one of the worst losses ever, he still saw his career till the end, and retired healthy. The remaining entries on our list don't get that luxury, and had careers cut shorter than they would have liked. Number 3, Tony Romo. Another quarterback who never made it to the big game. He never even made it to an NFC championship. Tony Romo was the quarterback for the Cowboys and actually went undrafted to them in 2003. He was most known for putting together incredible seasons and then becoming unclutch when it mattered the most. A 30,000-yard passing career with 29 game-winning drives reduced to a botched snap, a one-and-done choke, and a Dez non-catch amidst a sea of 8-8 seasons that made Terrell Owens cry.
It's my quarterback.
In a preseason game in 2016 against the Seahawks, Romo got his spine compressed into early retirement. After going down with the injury, rookie quarterback Dak Prescott took the reins and picked up where Romo left off by going 13-3 and choking in the playoffs. Not what anyone outside of Philadelphia wanted to see from Romo, and to go out in the preseason no less. These games don't mean anything. It really shocked me watching him play in this one, but it didn't shock me that it resulted in injury. This is still one of the bigger what-if scenarios in recent memory, because we wouldn't have seen the Dak and Zeke tandem play out how it did. Even though Romo couldn't end things on his own terms, he got a good gig at CBS doing color commentating, so I say all's well that ends well. Number 2, Andrew Luck. The Colts drafted Luck in 2012 after they destroyed Peyton Manning's body so hard he went to Denver. So Indy needed a fresh face to destroy just as hard. Luck was regarded as the nicest player in the NFL, congratulating players that squashed him on the field. Since the man got hit so hard and so often, Luck had an unlucky history with injuries. These ranged from a concussion and torn labrum to a high ankle sprain and lacerated kidneys. Oh, and fun fact, a high ankle sprain is just a broken leg. He announced his retirement during a preseason game as he suffered with this high ankle sprain, deciding not to go through surgery and rehab just to get repeatedly plastered over the turf. So technically his final game was the AFC Divisional, where he went 19 of 36 for 203 yards and a touchdown with no picks in a 31-13 stomping by the Chiefs. Even though he couldn't do what Manning did and decided to focus on his health instead of playing for an organization that kept trying to kill him, the fans still gave him warm cheers and well wishes as he walked off the field at Lucas Oil one final time. Yeah, they booed him. They fucking booed him. This one sucks, cause the team injured him to shit, and then the fans booed him when he finally had enough of getting injured to shit. This is why he's number 2 on the list. Injuries killing your body and the love of the game is one thing. Getting booed by the people who were just cheering you on is something else. Now, for the number 1 worst final game of all time. Joe Theismann, actually pronounced Thyman. Theismann changed the pronunciation of his surname while at Notre Dame to rhyme with Heisman in a bid for the trophy. It didn't work, but he still landed on an NFL team, albeit undrafted, and signed with the Washington really shouldn't say that name in 1974. Thyman led the team called Washington to their first ever Lombardi win in Super Bowl 17 over the Miami Dolphins. He led them back to the big game the following year during an MVP season, but got run over by the Raiders 38-9. He went 16 of 35 for 243 yards and 2 picks, including a Super Bowl record shortest pick 6. On November 18, 1985, Theismann suffered what many call the most gruesome injury in sports history. During a Monday Night Football game, primetime television mind you, Washington and the New York Giants battled in a routine division rivalry. Tied 7-7 in the second quarter, Washington's offense attempted a trick play which got shut down by Lawrence Taylor. Because if you played NFC East football in the 1980s, you had to answer to Lawrence Taylor. Yet on such a routine sack, Taylor landed on Theismann's leg awkwardly, causing everything from the shin down to lie flat on the turf, which in the medical world is referred to as something a leg shouldn't fucking do. The failed flea flicker would be the last snap, no pun intended, of Theismann's career. The team didn't want to re-sign him, understandable. They weren't sure if he'd be back to full form, and he didn't want to retire. Also understandable. Theismann was placed on waivers, which ended his contract with Washington, and no team wanted to sign him because he grew an impromptu third knee in front of the whole country. Plus, CBS dropped serious loot to get him into play-by-play, so at least he could stay close to football. If only he could get close to the Hall of Fame, though. Come on, this man had better numbers than either Staubach or Namath, and got his leg eviscerated on national television. Get him a gold jacket, damn it. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other uploads. If you didn't like this list, what other players should have been included? Let me know what other list I should make, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.
And if you do that, it's really unfair. It's really unfair. It's my team. It's my quarterback. And if you guys do that, man, it's unfair. We lost as a team. We lost as a team, man.